The story starts with a teenage guy named Mark at a party. He tries to hook up with a girl, but she's not interested, so he goes home feeling frustrated. At home, he watches some grown-up stuff online to unwind. The next day, his mom tells him his uncle and his new wife, Gina, are coming to visit. Gina's from Russia and has a daughter, Natasha. Mark meets Natasha for the first time at the airport. They have a big party at his house after his uncle and Gina get married. Mark can't keep his eyes off Natasha. Later that night, Mark brings Natasha to his room. She asks him what he usually does there, and he says he plays video games and studies. Then Natasha asks him a shocking question: has he ever brought a girl to his room for something more? Mark is speechless. He tells her she's way too young to be talking like that, shouldn't she be embarrassed? Natasha surprises him again by saying no, she's not embarrassed at all. She claims to have been with over 100 people. She even offers to do the same with him. Mark tries to stop her, reminding her they're cousins now because of the marriage. Natasha doesn't care, she thinks her mom is cheap anyway, because she's seen her with other guys. This situation is getting really messed up for Mark. Mark clams up for some reason. Then, one day, his mom drops a bomb. Natasha, his cousin, just moved to town and doesn't know anyone. Mom says Mark has to stick with her until she makes friends, she's practically your family anyway. The next day, Mark heads to Natasha's new place. Her mom warns him, Natasha's a bit young, so don't hold it against her if she says something rude. Mom calls Natasha to the door, then tells her to get ready to hang out with Mark. Natasha storms off, clearly mad at her mom. Mark follows, curious. What's got you so steamed? Mark asks Natasha. She lets loose, saying she actually hates her mom. Mark tries to calm her down and takes her to his friend Rufus's house. Natasha hits it off with Rufus right away. Curious about Rufus, Natasha asks Mark about him. Mark explains that Rufus is all alone because his parents are out of town. After that, they grab dinner at a restaurant. Finally, Mark drops Natasha off at his place. As she gets out, Natasha tells him, "Don't come over tomorrow. I'll come to your house instead." One day, Mark was chilling at home studying when Natasha swung by. They chatted for a while, then decided to grab their bikes and cruise around. On their ride, Mark bumped into some friends and hooked them up with some drugs. Natasha, seeing this, realized Mark was dealing. Back at his place, she casually asked him for some. Mark didn't hesitate and they ended up partying together in his room. Feeling loopy, Natasha grabbed his laptop. Oops. Mark had forgotten to close out of some adult content he'd been watching. Surprisingly, Natasha seemed into it. The mood shifted as she logged onto Facebook and started showing him revealing pictures. Mark, well, got a certain feeling. Before he could even respond, Natasha started undressing. One thing led to another, and they ended up hooking up. Things got hot and heavy quickly. They spent tons of time together, getting physical constantly. Mark found himself falling for Natasha. As luck would have it, both their parents went on a trip, leaving Natasha with nowhere to go. Staying at Mark's place, they talked things out. Natasha confessed she loved being with him and wished she could stay forever. Mark, smitten, agreed. The mood turned serious when Natasha revealed her mom was cheating on his uncle with another guy. She claimed she told her uncle, but he didn't believe her. The story cuts back to Natasha's mom and Mark's uncle returning from their trip. The mom calls for Natasha to leave, but Natasha refuses, loving her time with Mark. Her mom, with a knowing look, says, "I know why you don't want to leave, and what you've been doing with Mark." Natasha explodes, arguing with her mom, but Mark's dad intervenes, catching the fight in midair. Natasha was furious with her mom. Mark's parents put a lot of pressure on Natasha, which forced her to move back home. The next day, Mark visited Natasha at her place. Natasha's mom opened the door and unloaded on Mark. She basically blamed Natasha for everything, calling her a brat with bad hygiene and saying she'd even gotten physical with other people, young and old. Then, she slammed the door in Mark's face. Mark had no choice but to leave. That night, Natasha showed up at Mark's house with all her stuff. She explained she was going back to her own city. "Would you come with me?" she pleaded, but Mark was speechless. Finally, Natasha blurted out the real reason for the move. Her mom had divorced her uncle because Natasha got physical with him on purpose. She wanted to cause a fight so her mom would break up with him. Mark couldn't believe his ears. With nothing left to say, Natasha retreated to a room for the night. She'd be leaving in the morning. Mark was heartbroken. He'd fallen for Natasha, but now everything was falling apart. Next morning, Mark gives Natasha some cash to help her move out. Natasha packs her things and leaves quietly. Back at Mark's place, everyone's buzzing about his uncle's split with his wife Gina. Mark knows the real reason behind the divorce, but keeps it zipped. A few days later, Mark gets a call from his friend Rufus, but ignores it. Finally, Mark decides to visit Rufus, only to find Natasha living there. Turns out, she moved in with Rufus. Rufus tries to explain, "I called you a bunch to tell you about Natasha, but you wouldn't answer." Natasha avoids eye contact, while Mark glares at her. It dawns on him that love is a sham, nothing but a big lie. Furious, Mark grabs his bike and storms out. Natasha watches him leave, silent. Back home, Mark can't stop thinking about Natasha. That's where the story leaves us, hanging with Mark's unspoken emotions. Turn on alerts, like, and subscribe for more videos similar to this one. Thank you for watching.